Calling me crazy. I'd rather be crazy than captive. Hi, my name is Miss Tay, and welcome back to Raising Your Crown. And today we are talking about a word that has been thrown at women for generations. And that word is crazy. Because have you ever noticed that every man has labeled like their exes as crazy at some point? Every single man. Okay? Bro, my ex was crazy. Oh, that girl was toxic. She was insecure. She was crazy like these seagulls. She was emotional. She was too much. She was obsessed. She wouldn't leave me alone. Meanwhile, this man has dated 7 women, and apparently all 7 women have independently woke up one morning and decided to become clinically unhinged because of him. Sir, at some point, we got to investigate the common denominator. Because I'm not saying every woman is right. I'm not saying every reaction is justified. And I'm definitely not saying that women cannot be toxic, because I know I have in the past. We absolutely can. But I think we've become way too comfortable using the word crazy to dismiss women when their emotions become inconvenient to others. And that's where I want to take this conversation. Because I recently came across this idea that really made me think about the way women have been conditioned to understand their own emotions. And it brought me back to the story of Adam and Eve. But before we talk about Eve, let's talk about the story of Lilith. Because Lilith is a very fascinating, interesting character. I quite admire her. She is from a Jewish folklore and later traditions. And in one version of the story of Lilith, Lilith was labeled to be Adam's first wife, created at the exact same time as Adam. And when Adam expected her to submit to him, Lilith basically said, why the fuck would I submit when we are equals? Okay, we are made from the same earth. And she left the Garden of Eden. Okay. I want everyone to look at what happens to Lilith in mythology. A woman refuses submission and becomes automatically associated with danger. She's a seductress. She's a demon. She's a threat. She's rebellious. And then we get to Eve. Eve doesn't leave. She reaches for knowledge. She eats the fruit. And what happens? Humanity falls. Mankind falls. The woman becomes the problem. She's the drama. And suddenly women are associated with temptation, with disobedience, with curiosity, with chaos. Now, I'm not saying Lilith was, removed from the Bible because of these particular reasons. I'm not saying this is accurate. I'm saying the contrast between Lilith and Eve is very interesting. One woman refuses to submit, another woman reaches for knowledge, and both stories become a part of a bigger conversation of culture and society today. What happens to a woman when she steps out of the role that is assigned to her? How much of women are actually crazy? Or is this just like a modern version of Eve is the problem? Because maybe the language has changed, but suspicion hasn't, okay? And before somebody starts typing away and messaging me and going in my DMs, like Miss Tay, why are you referring my ex as Eve? No, I'm just saying look at the archetype. Because there's something interesting about how women's emotions have been historically treated. A man's anger can be called leadership. A woman's anger can be called unstable. A man is passionate. A woman is dramatic. A man knows what he wants. A woman is demanding. A man has boundaries. A woman has attitude. A man walks away. He's protecting his peace. A woman walks away. She thinks she's better than everybody. Same behavior, different translation. You peep the game? I'm not here to tell women to stop feeling. I actually want you to feel that shit. Feel that shit. And feel all of it. Feel all that shit. But don't let every emotion and feeling become the instructions. because that's where emotional sovereignty comes in. Not in becoming emotionless, but becoming the person in charge of what happens next. Because, baby, if every emotion gets a ballot for society and people and religion to decide, then you are emotionally employed, and your emotions and feelings are the minions. Your intuition, girl, is sometimes not right. Okay? Sometimes your logic is sitting in the corner, looking you dead in the eyes, asking you, can we have a meeting? Can we have a powwow? Okay? Sometimes your emotions are telling you something important. And sometimes your emotions are reacting to something old. And that's why we need to learn the difference between intuition and activation. Intuition can say something isn't right. Activation says everything is wrong and we need answers right away. Intuition is usually quiet. Activation usually has a big megaphone. Intuition gives you information. Activation demands immediate impulse action. And if you don't know the difference, you will mistake your anxiety for discernment. You will mistake fear for intuition. You will mistake attachment for love. You will mistake emotional intensity for truth. And that is dangerous, because just because you feel something intensely doesn't mean your interpretation of it is accurate. Okay? Your feelings are real. Your interpretation is real. Okay? They're valid. And there can still be something wrong. And that's why we need to regulate before we react as women. A regulated woman can still cry. Okay? And let's kill that misconception. Emotional regulation doesn't mean you're walking around acting like you just left a meditation retreat in Bali. A regulated woman can cry. A regulated woman can get pissed the fuck off. A regulated woman can be angry. A regulated woman can say, you hurt my feelings. A regulated woman say, this shit is not right. I'm not standing for this. A regulated woman can change her mind. She can raise her voice. She can have a bad day. She can be disappointed. She can be heartbroken. The difference is she doesn't abandon herself inside one emotion. We've been confused that emotional regulation is suppression, and those are not the same things. Suppression says I'm fine. Regulation says I'm not fine, but I'll figure out what I need now. Regulation says I care and I still want to choose myself. Okay? Suppression says whatever. Regulation says this shit actually hurts me. And that's power, because the cool girl, the nice woman, the Proverbs woman, that shit can really drain you. You don't want to be the woman that never asks questions. Okay, you don't want to be a woman that never gets jealous. You don't want to be the woman who never cares. You don't want to be the woman who never asks for reassurance. You don't want to be the woman that never complains. You don't want to be the woman that doesn't want to seem needy. Okay, because that is not emotional maturity. That is emotional witness protection. You are allowed to feel every feeling, and that doesn't make you less desirable of a woman. Along the way, women have been taught, don't be too much. Don't love too much. Don't expect too much. Don't cry too much. Don't talk too much. Don't need too much. Don't be angry. Don't be difficult. Don't talk back. Don't be too emotional. Don't be crazy. We've created this nice girl, this aesthetic, okay, that says it's okay when it's not okay. I don't care when she absolutely cares. Do whatever you want when deep down inside, she secretly hopes that they won't. I don't need anything when she's starving emotionally, mentally, spiritually, sexually. And then eventually she explodes. And everybody looks around like, where did that come from? Where did that come from? Baby, it came from the 700 times of me telling you that shit wasn't cool. That's the problem. Stop treating every feeling like an emergency. Okay, this one is huge. Because sometimes you don't need an answer. Sometimes you need to sit with yourself. You don't need to call him. You need to take a fucking beat. You don't need to post that subliminal message. You need to journal about what that situation is making you feel. You don't need to send a whole 10 paragraph text explaining what they did wrong. You need to sleep on it. You don't need to figure out what his silence means, okay? What his avoidance means. You need to stop making his silence responsible for your nervous system. Because emotional independence means I don't need another person to regulate me before I can regulate my damn self. Now, that doesn't mean I don't need people. That doesn't mean I don't need a man. That doesn't mean I don't accept comfort. That doesn't mean I don't need to communicate. It means I don't make another adult responsible for whether I'm okay or not. Because if your peace depends on whether somebody texts you back or not, they don't just have your heart. They have the remote control. And baby, you need to take those batteries out because your emotional state cannot be a hostage negotiation. Peace is not something you can give to anybody else, and peace is not something a man can give you. You really need to hear this, women. A man can contribute to your peace. A healthy relationship can create safety. A loving partner can make you feel like your life is soft. Okay? But peace is something you build within yourself. Because if you believe a man is responsible for your peace or someone else is responsible for your peace, you will tolerate almost anything to keep that person. You'll say, at least we're together while you're miserable. You'll confuse access with love. You'll confuse consistency with compatibility. You'll confuse being chosen with being valued. You will stay in situations that disturb your spirit and dysregulate you because you're terrified of the emotional withdrawal that comes from leaving that situation. That's not peace. That's codependency. Okay? And I'm not talking about financial, dependency. I'm talking about emotional dependency. The belief that I cannot be okay unless everybody else is okay. That's a prison. And emotional sovereignty is getting the key. Stop outsourcing your self-worth. I've said this already. This is where I think women get caught. We start asking people to confirm who we are, to validate who we are. Do you think I'm pretty? Do you still love me? Why didn't he choose me? Why did she unfollow me? Why haven't they called? Why don't they want me? And eventually your self-esteem becomes a public debate. Everybody gets a ballot. Everybody gets a word in. Everybody gets to vote on your worth. Nah, man. Absolutely the fuck not. Your worth cannot be up for democracy because some people do not have the emotional capacity and intelligence to recognize what they're looking at. You can hand somebody a diamond and they can use it for a paperweight. That doesn't mean the diamond is worthless. It means the person didn't know what they had when they had it. So stop asking people who mishandled you to appraise you. And yes, sometimes we are the problem. We have to have that conversation too, because reclaiming the word crazy doesn't mean we get to avoid accountability, ladies. Sometimes we are doing too much. Sometimes I be doing too much, y'all. Sometimes, we are projecting. Sometimes we are manipulating. Sometimes we are controlling. Sometimes we're checking the phones, the locations. Sometimes we are creating the problems in our lives because we're too afraid of becoming abandoned or being abandoned. Sometimes we're expecting someone else to heal the wounds that they did not create. And sometimes we're the toxic ex. And that's okay to admit, because accountability does not make you less of a woman. It makes you powerful. You cannot heal what you're committed to always defend. And that's where emotional maturity becomes sexy, not performative, okay? Not perfection. Self-awareness. I was triggered. I was overreacting. I misunderstood. I was projecting. I need to apologize. I need to leave. I need help. I need help. That's a big one. I need to stop this shit that I keep repeating. That is grown woman, goddess, queen energy. Okay? Because emotional maturity isn't, I never lose my shit. It is, when I lose my shit, I know how to find myself back again. And I think this conversation gets especially interesting when we're talking about femininity, because sometimes femininity online gets reduced to just aesthetics. Okay? Pink dresses, and I talk like this high. Soft candles, perfume, nails done, hair done, everything good, dinner, being paid by a man. And listen, I'm not mad at that soft life either. I love me a soft life girl. I love me a soft girl. But femininity without emotional sovereignty, that is just aesthetics. It is what it is. You can wear the silk dress and still be emotionally imprisoned. You can have the luxury home and still be checking your man's location. You can still get the flowers, you know, and the gifts and still hate yourself. You can be adored by a man and still not know how to fully love yourself. The deepest feminine power isn't just being desirable by a man. It's about being self-led. And maybe this is why I keep thinking about women and the ocean, because I look at the ocean right now and I think about how violent the current can be, how it can destroy, how it has rage, how it can become a force of fucking nature. But then hours later, it becomes peaceful. It becomes still. It becomes beautiful, life-giving. And nobody looks at the ocean and says, she's too emotional. Nobody tells the ocean to calm down. Nobody tells the wave, hey, you're doing too much. We understand that the ocean contains depth, power, destruction, peace, mystery, and creation all at once. And women, we are made from the same complexity. We carry life. We give life. We nurture. We create. We transform. We bleed. We heal. We birth ideas, families, movements, art, culture, entire fucking worlds. And across cultures, women have been connected to deities and creation, fertility, water, the moon, the nature, and the spiritual realm. So why the hell have we been taught to downplay that? Why are we so quick to call ourselves too much when our emotions run so deep like the ocean? Why do we have to apologize for our intensity? Why do we confuse softness with weakness? Why do we act like being powerful becomes being less feminine? Maybe the problem isn't that women are too emotional. Maybe we've forgotten that emotion itself is a form of power. The ocean doesn't need to apologize for having waves, and neither should we. But just like the ocean, this power needs direction. A current without direction can destroy. A woman without emotional sovereignty and regulation can destroy herself. And that's why this isn't about suppressing our power. It's about learning how to lead with it. Knowing when to be the wave, knowing when to be the still, knowing when to move, knowing when to wait, knowing when something needs to be released. Because your divinity isn't about being perfectly calm. Your divinity is in being able to hold your depth without drowning in it, knowing what you feel, knowing what you need, knowing when to stay, knowing when to leave, knowing when you're triggered, knowing when you're receiving information, knowing when you're projecting, knowing when to speak, and knowing when to be silent is the answer. That's sovereignty. So, what about crazy? Maybe we reclaim it, not because we want to glorify being dysregulated and unstable, but because we're done allowing the word crazy to erase a woman's humanity. Because sometimes crazy means she's finally angry. She finally says no. She finally stops accepting the bullshit and disrespect. She finally questions the story. She finally questions the conditioning. She finally notices the patterns. She finally stopped being convenient for others. She finally stopped performing as the nice girl. Crazy really does mean sometimes you do need help, yes. And there's no shame in that either, because mental health struggles don't make somebody evil. Trauma doesn't make somebody unlovable. And emotions doesn't make you broken. But refusing to take responsibility for your character and your behavior, you are allowed to feel everything. You are responsible for what you do with it as well. The goal isn't about being happy 24/7. I think we've been sold this dream, this ridiculous idea that healing means that you're supposed to be happy all the time. No. I don't want to be happy all the time. It sounds exhausting. Sometimes I want to be angry. Sometimes I want to cry. Sometimes I want to sit in silence. Sometimes I want to scream into the pillow. Sometimes I want to dance around my house like I just won a Grammy. I'm just being a woman. I'm being human. Okay? A woman. The goal isn't constant happiness. The goal is stability. The ability to return to self. To feel something without becoming it. And to experience pain without building an identity around it. To experience rejection without feeling like you're unworthy. To experience anger without becoming destructive. To experience love without losing yourself. To experience loneliness without running back to somebody who wasn't good for you in the first place. That's emotional sovereignty. And maybe that's the real crown. Not controlling everybody else around you, but controlling yourself. Not controlling your emotions, but leading with them. Not becoming cold, but becoming grounded. Not pretending you don't care, but caring without abandoning yourself. And maybe Eve's story isn't just about a woman who disobeyed. Maybe it's about humanity. Encountering knowledge, desire, consequence, shame, and consciousness. Maybe the problem isn't that women feel too much. Maybe we've never been properly taught what to do with what we feel. And maybe that's why generation after generation of women have been called crazy, when what they really need was the language, the boundaries, the safety, the self-awareness, the community, the accountability, the emotional sovereignty. So the next time you see a woman get called crazy, I want y'all to pause and ask, is she crazy, or is she just finally being honest with herself? Because sometimes the woman everybody calls crazy is the woman who simply stopped participating in her disappearance. Okay? And sometimes she really needs to heal as well. Both can be true at the same time. That's the nuance. That's the crown. Because the goal isn't to become a woman who is never in control or loses control. The goal is to become a woman that belongs to herself. And baby, when you belong to yourself, no one can make you an emotional hostage. Not a man, not an ex, not your mother, not your friends, not society, not your past, not even your own fear. You can feel it. You can listen to it. You can learn from it. And then you can decide what happens next. That is stability. And that, my friend, my queen, my goddess, is raising your crown. That was a word. Thank you so much, y'all. Until next time.